about that in terms of the employment issue, absolutely positively correct. I think in terms of economic activity, it's a lot harder to say because there has been so much debt-driven stimulus that there's a lot of apparent economic activity that is really just driven by debt. So if you get $1 in economic activity, but you had to add $2 in debt to get it, are you really any better off?
Yeah, because you're still, it's like take one step forward, a step and a half back. We didn't have you faded up the first 2 seconds. I want to get your quote exactly right here. I was asking, by the economic measurements, are we in a depression? And you said?
There's really two ways of looking at it. The one is from the standpoint of employment and the economy. And then by that measure, we're definitely in a depression, not in a recession, and we're still in it. The other measure is just judged by economic activity. And while we have had a return to economic activity in terms of positive GDP growth, much of that growth has been driven by debt. Vastly larger increases to debt than you've had increases to GDP. So the numbers are really skewed because of the size of the fiscal and monetary stimulus.
All right. Very interesting. I agree with you on that. Let's talk to Faye in Florida. Faye, you're on the air with our guest, Porter Stansberry. Go ahead.
Good afternoon, guys.
Hi.
Thank you so much for your information. I really have learned a lot from you, Alex, and from Lindsay Williams and all of your guests. And Porter, thank you so much for your commentary today. You touched on this briefly before the break about the connection with oil and the U.S. dollar. Can you explain to us further what will happen when the oil cartel takes us off of the U.S. dollar reserve currency for oil?
Yeah, what, $7 a gallon by the time they're done, Porter?
Well, you know, it's really interesting. Most people don't know a lot about the history of the U.S. involvement in the Middle East and the oil businesses. And, you know, the U.S. has been involved in hiding the true price of oil from the Middle East for a long time. When the dollar first broke from the gold standard back in the early 1970s, the Saudi Arabians seized the U.S. ownership of the oil fields because they felt that we were no longer living up to our contract, which was to supply them with our share of the earnings in the form of a gold-backed dollar. So we have a long history of these sorts of problems, and you know, the solution to it is we'll either have to meet a vastly higher price, or we'll have to come up with a new form of exchange with the Middle East. And there's no doubt about that. I mean, that's absolutely underway right now, and that problem is going to accelerate rapidly. The only good news is that there are large sources of hydrocarbons that have just been discovered in shales in Pennsylvania and in places like Texas and Colorado and the Dakotas. So there is some likelihood that the price of oil may not go quite as high as it would under a normal hyperinflation, simply because we have discovered large new domestic sources.
Well, I've noticed that in the last 5 years, they've been drilling like mad hatters all over the United States, everywhere for oil and gas.
Absolutely. One of my friends is a Texan. He's a wildcatter from Abilene. His name is Cactus. He recently closed a deal where he sold some land down South Texas for $1 billion.
Oh, the Chinese just bought another 600,000 acres in South Texas.
Yeah, Cactus sold his land to Statoil, so a Norwegian company. So, yeah, the world is definitely coming to our oil patch, and that's very, very good for America. Unfortunately, it's not nearly good enough to repair all the damage we've done over the last 30 years.
Yeah, that's why Texas, out of all 50 states, is doing the best, though, because it is like Spindletop here.
Yeah.
They're drilling in the middle of major cities like Fort Worth. We may not have the stockyards anymore, but we got the oil. We'll be right back, Porter. More calls.
Big Brother, mainstream media, government cover-ups. You want answers? Well, so does he. He's Alex Jones on the GCN Radio Network. And now, live from Austin, Texas, Alex Jones.
Well, Porter Stansberry of endofamerica3.com. That's endofamerica3.com with Stansberry and Associates is joining us. If you just tuned in, Barron's called his predictions a dire prophecy after they came true, a prophecy. and he's predicting that it will become completely evident by the end of this next year coming up that the dollar is no longer the world reserve's currency. He's been saying this for a few years, but now he's really coming out and saying this is it. And you're seeing the Chinese and Russians say they're not going to deal in dollars for inter-country trade, but between each other. But he's here to take your phone calls right now. But first, I want to play that ad that an organization, Citizens Against Government Waste, was deemed too controversial by ABC, A&E, the History Channel, and many, many others. You guys got that video ready? Fantastic, because I'd forgotten you to get it ready. I'm glad you already had it. Just because Porter was talking about censorship and how it's self-imposed a lot of times because people at the Wall Street Journal or Fox or CNN, they are all tied into these companies, or in some cases are getting government bailouts themselves in the case of MSNBC and CNBC owned by General Electric. And they don't want you to understand that they're globalists, they're offshore, they don't care about this country or middle-class wealth. They will sacrifice it on the altars of their globalist system. So here's that ad with the communist Chinese, you know, a decade from now, talking about how America imploded like Rome or other empires that devalued their currency and collectively was banned from U.S. television. We'll get Porter Stansberry's take on this. Here it is. Beijing, China, 2030 AD, so it's 20 years from now. Why did great nations fail? The ancient Greeks, the Roman Empire, and the United States of America. They all made the same mistake, turning their back on principles. They made them great. America tried to spend and tax itself out of a great recession. Enormous so-called stimulus spending, massive changes to health care, government takeovers of private industries, and crushing debt. Of course, we own most of the debt, so now they work for us.
You can change the future. You have to. Join Citizens Against Government Waste to stop the spending that is bankrupting America.
Well, who knows about Congress, but you can individually find out solutions that I think are absolutely dead on at endofamerica3.com. Porter Stansberry, you know, in the big picture, in your view, is there any way to right this sinking ship? I think it's going under, but if we know who to blame, then the globalists can't get even more power out of what they're doing, and we may be able to use the anger to finally kick them out of this country and reignite the engine of liberty right off these debts. Do you have any large-scale solutions?
No, but I have a lot of cynicism. Good luck, Alex. I have also a comment about that ad. You know, the producers of that ad are something called the People Against Government Waste or something like that.
Yeah,
right?
Citizens Against Government Waste.
What isn't government waste? What does the government do that's efficient or useful? I mean, it seems kind of an oxymoronic name for a group of people, right? But as far as how to stop this thing, it's again, let's go back to the simple math. More than half of the households in this country do not pay any federal income taxes. Period. Okay. So how are you going to win against those people in a democracy?
Two wolves and a sheep voting on what's for dinner. The banksters are going to sick the welfare hordes on you.
Absolutely. They absolutely will. There's two forms of welfare in this country, as you well know. There's the welfare that goes out to the lower class and the lower middle class to buy votes, and then there's the welfare that goes out to the corporations that helps the politicians stay in power. And I honestly don't know that there's any way to break that system except for a collapse of the system. And I guess the only sort of good news, the silver lining, is that you can't continue to run an economy or a society this way. It's too corrupt. And eventually, the truth comes out in the numbers, and those are the numbers that I have to show people in my video. You can't go on running deficits and debt forever. It's going to destroy the economy.
But here's the problem, and I agree with you, Porter. Here's the problem. They have preemptively set up a police state. They plan to go into a Stalinistic system to prop this up. They know it's going to implode, and so it's during that implosion phase that we'd better point the finger at the culprits and end this system, or they're planning to make it even worse. And the reason I played that video earlier, regardless of the political group statements, is, and of course they're against the out-of-control debt as well, is to illustrate that that was collectively censored. And that was the point you made at the start of the interview last hour, is that the media self-censors.
No, there's no doubt about that, Alex. There's absolutely no doubt about that. And I'm sure you have been threatened by the government over the years.
Oh, yeah.
There's been talk about shutting down talk radio, things like that. The government has sued me for writing an investment report about, essentially was about corruption and a government-controlled company. Anyone who really speaks out and says the truth about things is going to put a bullseye on their heads, and they're going to get attacked. And, I know that your viewers, there are probably different opinions in regards to the WikiLeaks guy who has been broadcasting state secrets. I think some people probably think he should be hung up and strung up. But I actually think that anyone who increases the amount of information is doing a good thing, not a bad thing.
Well, I agree with Ron Paul in his statement that telling the truth is not treason. And Sarah Palin says he's un-American. Well, he is from Australia.
Exactly.
I mean, she was saying North Korea is our ally the week before. I don't want to bash her, but really, folks, if she doesn't have a teleprompter, she's in deep trouble. And now this is who they're getting ready to run for president as our savior. I mean, look, my whole issue here is there's no doubt you're right. There's no doubt the video you're breaking down, End of America, the3.com, really has some good solutions in it. I'm just flabbergasted by how fast this is moving. Let's talk to Bob in Arizona. Bob, you're on the air with our guest. Go ahead.
Thank you very much, Alex. Quickly, just to you, Porter, and your crew, Alex, Merry Christmas.
Thank you, buddy.
Yeah, you bet. You're doing a wonderful job. And I've actually just, I've got one quick statement and then a question for you, Alex, and a question for Porter. My quick item I wanted to share with you is on the Viper teams. I saw a Viper team come through my neighborhood, and I'm out in the middle of the desert, Alex.
For those that don't know, the TSA is admittedly to be on the streets of America. They now are in the malls. These are federal minimum wage stormtroopers training you that they will put their hands down your pants. Porter, do you have any comments on that?
I'm sorry. I'm just not familiar with any of that stuff.
Well, that's the TSA
I don't find it surprising. I don't find it surprising. I just don't know the details of it.
Well, that's the TSA has announced they're going to take over all of America. Quickly, because I want to get to others that have specific questions for Porter. Bob, what did you see?
Okay, do you want me to ask my questions, or do you want me to see what I saw regarding that?
Just briefly, what did you see with the TSA?
Very, very briefly, what I saw was in my neighborhood as I was out walking. Off the main highway, we call them dualies. I've lived in Texas.
That's a truck with the four wheels in the back.
Exactly. This dually was pulling a long white container, or that like a mobile home type situation. We call them Batmobiles out here.
Okay, it doesn't matter. What'd you see?
Well, it said Department of Homeland Security, turned off the highway. This was probably around 3 in the afternoon.
Sure, what did it do? What did it do?
It basically just came through the neighborhood, did a U-ey, went back out, and went on the highway.
Okay, so they're driving around everywhere and putting up telescreens. What's your question for Porter?
My question for Porter is regarding the Federal Reserve in New York. And, of course, they're not federal. When I shared this with you, Alex, a few weeks or maybe a month or so ago, I was in the Merchant Marines. I went to the Merchant Marine Academy on Long Island. Our field trip for economics, or for when we were back there as plebes, was to go out at Wall Street and have a tour of the Federal Reserve. When we were taken down into the basement, our guide